So I just want to thank everybody for coming here today for our first annual Caribbean Magazine Plus Short Story Award ceremony from our 2021-2022 short story contest. We have with us today Dr. Nicola Hunt from the University of the West Indies. She was the lead evaluator. And we also have our first place finisher, Mr. Brandon Bullows, with his, yes, Mr. Bullows, with his entry Barracuda. We have our second place finisher, Ms. LaFleur Coburn, with her entry Remain. And then we have our third place finisher, Ms. Sulin McCrae, with Watching the Waves. So we're going to have an action-packed day today. I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Hunt very shortly, but I just want to read something about Dr. Hunt so I can introduce her formally. Okay, Dr. Hunt is a doctoral graduate of Literatures in English from the program of University of Cave Hill, University of West Indies, Cave Hill. She began her academic relationship with the university as a UWI Open Scholar and continued in her postgraduate experience as a beneficiary of the UWI Emory Exchange. Dr. Hunt has lectured in areas of literary criticism in the Caribbean and Caribbean literature, as well as introductory courses in drama, poetry, prose, and fiction. So welcome, Dr. Hunt. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So let me begin by thanking Mr. Yuri Kemp for his invitation to be head judge of this year's short story competition for Caribbean Magazine. A few remarks about the assessment of the entries, and if you would indulge me, some personal thoughts coming out of this experience. To offer some context, which was nicely done by Mr. Kemp, I have been full-time in academia for almost 9 years at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, and all that time has been with Literatures in English. Even before that period, my relationship with literature has been a long-standing one. My earliest memories, as well as some of my fondest, have intersected with literature. I have what I believe to be an abiding affection for literature in all its clearly recognizable forms of poetry, drama, and prose. And though I'm tempted to say, like a doting parent should, that I love them all equally, I find that I have a soft spot for prose fiction. It is what I turn to for comfort, for clarity, and sometimes for conviction. So you can understand that when presented with this opportunity by Mr. Kemp, my reflex response was to say yes. I consider it a privilege to be able to read and a joy to read creative works. So I hope that I've conveyed you who had the courage to write your stories. Thank you. In assessing these works, I acknowledge two main related approaches, the technical and the subjective. With my experience as a professional academic in the study of literary texts, I first looked at the basic building blocks of narrative: plot, characterization, setting. Each story had to answer fundamental questions regarding these basics, such as, did it introduce a resolution? Were the main characters carefully individualized, as opposed to being stereotypical or talking heads? Was there enough attention to how the setting shaped the mood and framed the ongoing action? Those stories that fulfilled these criteria then faced the crucial litmus test. How strongly did the work as an organic unit move the reader? For this, myself and the panel had several discussions about why we made it onto the shortlist. And even though there were differences about what we valued more, we all know whether it was the unexpected brutality layered within the neat, simple language of Watching the Waves, the conversational intimacy that dramatized loss and love in You Remain, or the visceral terror captured at the end of Barracuda. Each of these stories gave us moments of anticipation, surprise, insight. Once again, I feel it's appropriate here to say thank you. Time allowing, I can share a few personal thoughts, and I'll try to be brief. Writing is hard work. It takes commitment, courage, sacrifice, and humility. Writing is hard work to shape the creative potential, the imaginative spark that drives you to write. I saw that potential in several of the stories submitted, and even though they didn't make it onto the shortlist, that adult and children's fiction. Several of these stories featured child protagonists or adolescents embarking on adventuring messages. To hone that potential, I think will require reading more in that particular field, along with consistent interpretation of what and why. By this, I mean what works and why does it work. Take advantage of writing workshops. We are living in a time of virtual meetings that can connect us with seasoned writers, with editors, with writing communities. Imagine in 10 years' time, primary school children reading alongside Cinderella stories like The Yellow Robe, which was one of the submissions for this competition, or secondary school curricula featuring Caribbean folk tales for young readers. This can happen, readers, but because we need well-written content to strengthen literacy in the Caribbean. I also made note of several speculative stories with such potential, and I became excited at what is ahead for Caribbean writing in this genre. So keep writing with the view that what you do is not a hobby, it's not therapy. It can be, but to make your stories live beyond you, keep in mind that it is a craft which demands building your skills and expanding your perspective. Keep writing and editing, keep writing and proofreading, keep writing and self-critiquing, keep writing. And that's it. I appreciate you allowing me to share my general thoughts. So I now have the opportunity to speak to each of the prize winners individually. And something you may not have been aware of was that the panel and I made a blind assessment, which is we didn't know anything about who wrote these stories. We were just reading them for what was on the page. And I was saying to the prize winners, what was interesting seeing you guys now face to face is some of the assumptions we made while we were reading about what was going on with the story and why some of the decisions were made for how you developed a character or you're shaping a plot. So what I want to do is start with the third prize winner. And I think that was Sue. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Sue, right. I wanted to find out a little bit about yourself, about how you got started in writing, and then for you to share with us a little bit about your writing process, specifically in terms of this story.
Well, getting started in writing, I don't remember any time when I wasn't started in writing. I was always writing. I have written 2 novels, many short stories. I tried my hand at poetry, but I do not think poetry is where I will excel. But short stories and novels in the Bahamas. This story came out of, well, hurricane season. Mm-hmm. And we know what hurricane season is like. We live in the Caribbean. And I wanted to show a picture of what happened during hurricane season, but I also wanted to show what happens that people don't talk about. There's a lot of things that happen in families that people just gloss over and they don't talk about it. It's not talked about in church. And it happens to people all the time. Yep. I don't want to give too much away. So that's in as simply as possible because the protagonist is a little girl. So I didn't want to go and use high-flown language. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible and to show what was going on in this little brain of hers. Okay. My writing process, I write when I can. If I have lots and lots of time, I get lost on the computer and somebody will have to come and take me out of here and feed me. If I don't have lots of time, I push it in. I push it in as much as I can. But writing to me, as you say, it's not therapy. It's not a hobby. It's something that I have to do, that I keep doing.
Thank you. I wanted to say about this particular story, some of the thoughts that myself and the panel had about it. And we were all caught off guard by the ending. So when I talk about that simple language that kind of drew you in and the child's perspective, and we're looking at this very innocent child, and then we realize the enormity of her circumstance. I have to say personally, there was a moment where I just put the story down and said, oh, I had to sit there and think about it a moment and then go back to it. And so I want to thank you for that moment, because it's lovely when you get surprised. It's lovely when you're reading something and it gives you an unexpected gift. And I think the ending was an unexpected gift for this story. So thank you so much, Sue.
Okay.
So I want to now move on to our second prize winner, and that is LaFleur with You Remain. And I have the same set of questions for you. I just want you to share something about yourself and your, I suppose, your career in writing, and then some insight into the process that allowed you to write this particular story.
Okay, so hi again, I'm LaFleur. I'm a literature student, and so my business is reading and writing. But I guess unlike Sue and yourself, Dr. Hunt, I write for therapy. Writing for me is therapeutic, and I question society, I question humanity. And when I reflect even on my own actions and my own experiences, I go to writing for, I guess, catharsis, for healing, for my own, answers to my questions. Writing is that for me. Writing is that space for me. The best friend that keeps talking. That's writing for me. In terms of You Remain, I'm deep in, I am deep in research in mental health, because in my research, in my academic research, I am, looking into what pushes one of my favorite writer and one of the main part of my research, Nigel Thomas, a Vincentian writer. He writes a lot about mental health, male sexuality, but more so mental health. I wanted to, research how the Caribbean community view it. Why is it so stigmatized? Why is it such a taboo? And how can we approach this differently? How can we approach it in a more positive manner? And that's how You Remain was born. Imagine a society where instead of being institutionalized, or instead of being isolated and shunned, where you're embraced. And that's really the scope of You Remain.
So I wanted to share with you as well what the panel discussion looked like. And let me begin by when I said the assumptions we were making. One of the panel members said, this is a Vincentian writer.
Oh.
This is Vincent. Right? And I said, yes. And is that a good thing or a bad thing to know that? And then we kind of fleshed out that the way in which you brought that setting, and it was so recognizable to someone from the Caribbean space, we thought that was a particularly good thing, right? And then we also had a back and forth about the ending, because I think one set of us thought, like two-thirds of us thought it was a happy ending, it was a good ending, and then 1/3 of us thought. But what I wanted to underscore was, regardless of the response, the nature of the response, it garnered a deep emotional reaction from your readership. So even though we couldn't agree about whether or not it was moved by what happened to the central character and the way we saw her deterioration in the story, and then for some of us, what we thought was the redemption at the end, I have to admit, I was the one that saw it as a happy ending, right? So the others kind of disagree with me on this, but I leave that open to interpretation, because as I did mention in my remarks, a lot of a great deal of this is subjective, right? About how you move your reader. And sometimes when you give birth to that story and let it out into the world, much like a child, you don't really have control over how people are going to respond to it. So I just wanted to underscore that what was really crucial to all of us was everyone had a very profound emotional response to the journey of that central character. Right? So I want to thank you for that. And I also want to point out that we were also drawn in by the motifs that you used that were very reminiscent of canonical Caribbean writing. So we were looking, and I'm not going to were, but we were all struck by how the writing to us was very reminiscent of those of Caribbean women writers that we saw coming out of the, that period immediately after Walcott and Brathwaite and going into the 90s. So we thought that not only did you kind of pull on that canonical work, you made it your own in the way that you wrote. So for us, I know coming from academia, that was a particular treat, being able to, pick out these motifs and say, that's very recognizable. We know what that does. So we want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
So now I move on to our first prize winner, which is Barracuda. And that would be Brandon.
Yes, hello, Dr. Hunt.
Hi. So Brandon, much like the other two prize winners, we just want to hear something about your experience writing in general, and then the kind of process you underwent in order to produce this particular story.
Okay, well, I think I should start from the beginning because I only really started taking literature seriously about 2 years ago. Honestly, I went through my entire life practically hating reading as a whole, but I was a songwriter. So there was a precedent for lyrical appreciation. And I started getting into philosophy, and I would read a lot of European philosophy. And then one day, I read that I should read Jean-Paul Sartre's novel, Nausea. And that's basically the first book I ever read, or first work of fiction I ever read. And from there, I wanted more. And then my girlfriend gave me a copy of Yukio Mishima's Spring Snow, so a Japanese classic. And I saw their love. And so I would say it's thanks to my girlfriend, really, that I wrote Barracuda, because I became so enamored with the Japanese's appreciation for nature that one day me and her were sitting at the beach together, and I was really just marveling at how beautiful the beaches are on Aruba. And I said I wanted to write prose fiction about this. I wanted to talk about this. And a big part of it too was that I was working on a short story collection because on Aruba we have a very small literary community. Only a handful of writers currently active, and I wanted to contribute to that in a big way. So I wanted to write a collection of different stories tackling different prose styles and different genres. And when I got to Barracuda, it was all about nature being descriptive and symbolic and mysterious. And so, that's how I got to writing Barracuda, really.
I want to thank you for those comments, more so because it confirmed something we were thinking about in our discussions among the panel, and that was the way in which the setting felt like it was a character in the story. So we were we were trying to discuss how we should feel towards the way you position the setting, because you have to understand that when people think of Caribbean writing, they assume that you have to write about Caribbean physical space and the beach. So it very easily can become a cliche. And what we were rewarded by as we started to read Barracuda was how it ceased to be a cliche in that story. Because if you don't have that experience of, like you said, reading literature, but for like myself especially and the panelists, we have this background in reading Caribbean literature from secondary school. And so there's certain things that we're used to seeing when someone says Caribbean writing. And it's either the beach or bus stops or open air markets. And so we were thinking, okay, is this going to be another cliche treatment? And we were pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't. The other discussion we had was about the symbolism. And so I don't want to, like I said, give away too much detail, but we were talking about this bracelet in the story and the significance of the bracelet. And what we enjoyed was the way in which it came around to the end of the story as well. It showed up at the end of the story. We felt a certain, it gave us a certain confirmation of the neatness and organic sense of the story. So we felt as though it wasn't a detail included that was superfluous. It had meaning throughout the story, but it was a detail that you could easily overlook. So we were really impressed by that. And much like Lafleur's story, there was some disagreement about the ending. There was some, why give away what the story is about, right? Why not just hide that? Because much like what happens at the end of the story, you want it to rise from the depths and surprise us. I will say that I myself don't have a problem with the title. I kind of very much like that there's this signal, this foreshadowing, because I have to admit, I was genuinely surprised by what happened at the end. And you may be tickled to know that one of the panelists compared your writing to a canonical American writer, a feminist, a writer that is associated with feminist theory. And they likened your writing to Kate Chopin and a particular story she has called The Awakening, because of how the protagonist goes out into the water. In her story, they found it reminiscent of what was going on in your story. But of course, without giving away too much, the endings are distinctly different. They're distinctly different.
Yeah.
Okay? Like I said in my remarks, that terror that you were able to convey that the protagonist was feeling was very important to this story, and definitely distinguishes you from Chopin and her writing. So we want to thank you for that, and for the way in which you kind of rescued that cliche and made it something that we thought was unique and interesting, and definitely pulled us in.
No, I really appreciate you saying that. It means a lot to me.
Right. So I wanted to turn it over to Mr. Kemp, because I know he said he had a few announcements to make. But before I directly do that, I wanted to point out two things about two of the stories, the second prize winner, third prize winning story, about the social significance of those stories within contemporary Caribbean experience. And both of those stories, like Lafleur was talking about mental health, and Sue was talking about the dynamic within families. That was something we also noticed in the panel, the way in which you took these very important, weighty social concerns, and for us, put it in a way that is easily accessible. So people could recognize these issues. And I think they're very topical for what is going on and what we're recognizing about Caribbean interpersonal relationships, and the way in which different responses to stigmatized issues. And what I really appreciate is that on the face of it, these are really entertaining stories. But as you dig deep within them, you realize that they're addressing some really profound issues. With Barracuda, what we were really drawn in by as well was the language. So there's a way in which it's both simple and sophisticated at the same time. And so we really appreciate that language use that you demonstrated in your story.
If I could add something, I think that comes from the fact that, I primarily, or basically I only write in Papiamento. And the translating process was very difficult for me. But in the end, me and my girlfriend, she helped me with this, of course, because English isn't exactly my primary language in writing. So she helped me out. And when we reached this result, I felt the same way you did, where the Pavimento language transferred over into this nice balance of elegance and simplicity, both at the same time.
Thank you for that. So, and I'm really encouraged that each prize-winning story came from a different part of the Caribbean. we're very surprised by that. So we have a prize winner from Aruba, one from St. Vincent, another one from the Bahamas. So we're really encouraged by that because we want that kind of pan-Caribbean reach. And I know that one of the things that I've heard in conversation is that when people think about Caribbean writing, they think about Jamaica and Trinidad and maybe Barbados. But it's really it's a very exciting time to see contemporary writing coming out of different parts of the Caribbean. So once again, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to all of our prize winners and to those who submitted to the competition. I know that some of you are thinking about where your writing is at in terms of the competition. And like I said in my remarks, I want to encourage you to keep writing. You have to understand how vital what you do is to our society, not just within the Caribbean, but in general. The importance of narratives, the importance of creative writing to help us process what's happening to us and eventually find solutions, right? So I want to now turn it over to Mr. Kemp. I was keeping an eye on the time.
Thank you, Dr.
So that he can make his announcements.
Thank you, Dr. Han. I just want to thank you, Dr. Han, for having us left off with this inaugural short story competition. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all your help. I just want to thank the Almighty God as well for giving me the opportunity to serve in such a way, because like how you said earlier, that we haven't been getting a lot of entries from the other parts of the Caribbean, places like Aruba, the Dutch Caribbean, and the Spanish Caribbean, and so we want to tap into all of that literature, all of that talent. So with me in particular, I just want to thank the Almighty God once again for giving me the oil, and I'll tell you why He gave me the oil. He giving me the oil to pour onto these people so I could give them the opportunity to come out here and showcase their talent, and showcase themselves, and they can put themselves in the spotlight. Okay, and let's start off with the announcements then. Well, at the tail end of that, I'm not sure. Well, you don't know this yet. Now I'm going to announce this right now. We have allocated a space for you guys at the Caricon Literary Festival, the Caribbean Literary Conference this year in June 3rd to the 7th. Okay, and Dr. Han's be giving all the information. She's going to lead you into that. And so what's going to happen is you're going to be asked to present your stories at the Caribbean Literary Conference in this June. It's going to be virtual, but they're going to have a live session in Los Angeles. And so you're going to be asked to, just read your story and tell us how you went through the same process. Same thing we're doing here. So that's a good treat I did for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy that experience and have a chance to meet not only authors like yourself, but publishers and people in the other people inside the literary field as well, the literary world. So you can, expand your horizons and like how Sue said, she writes books. She's a novelist. So this will be a good chance for her to shop her wares as well to the Caribbean Literary Conference. So this will be a good treat for you guys. And so with that, the second announcement is that it's bad news. We had a speech competition just then. We got no entries into that speech competition, none whatsoever. And we spent a good amount of money on that too. We spent about $2,500 just on marketing alone, and we got no entries. Nobody entered. So if one person have entered, they would have won. If one person would have entered, they would have won that competition. So nobody entered. So but we're going to do it again because we think it's a good initiative for the Toastmasters Caribbean. We partnered with them, and the proceeds were going towards them and building up their membership drive. So we were trying to help them. So we're going to do it again next year, and hopefully we can get more persons to enter in as well. And like I want to say again, thank you for everybody who entered into the competition, the winners, and all the people who entered in who paid their $25. I know people were saying, "Oh no, you can't be paying for a contest," but these things help us to provide not only the marketing space to get the news out there to people, but also to provide the awards. I think only 41 people entered the short story competition this year. Only 41 people. And I still have to pay the people. I still have to pay the winners. And so with that, paying you guys, I know I said the 28th of April, but I moved it to the 1st of April, May 1st or before. So you're going to get your awards on May 1st or before. And if you look in your chats, inside the Zoom chats, you're going to see your certificates, your award certificates. If you can't get it from them, I'm going to send it to you by email as well. So don't worry, you're going to get your awards and your little certificates you can put on your wall, okay? I would love to see it on your wall. Okay, the other announcement is our poetry contest is going to start again in May this year. Okay, we need an evaluator for that. So hopefully Dr. Hunt can help us with an evaluator for that. And let's hope we can find an evaluator. So we're going to start it again. It's going to run from about May to about August, about three months or so. And so it's going to be our second one. If you go to Caribbean Magazine Plus, our website, caribmagplus.com, you're going to see the book that's on Amazon right now, Signs of the Sun, of our poetry book from the last year's contest. And so, you can go check that out and you can see what we've done, how we've gotten those people involved. And we're going to create a book from the short story competition as well. So we're going to take the best entries. I think we're probably going to do about 10, maybe 15 entries and make it into a book of short stories for this year's Caribbean short story competition. So the third announcement is that, okay, I mentioned a partnership with CARICON. I mentioned the poetry contest. I think we're also going to do a photo contest as well. I was kind of against it because it was kind of glib. I didn't want to make it seem as if, oh no, we're doing this all over again. Everyone's doing a poetry photo contest, but I think we're going to do it because a lot of people have been asking about it. But the thing about it is we have to partner with someone that's going to give the photographers and the videographers a chance to get their works shown elsewhere other than just with Caribbean Magazine Plus. So we're still working on that. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, but we're going to do it this year, I think. We're going to launch that one this year. And with that, my magnum opus is going to happen this year in July 23rd. It's going to be the Tropic Spin Music and Song Competition this year. It's going to be July 23rd. We're getting musicians and artists from around the region to submit their music videos to us. It's going to be free, and we're going to do it live on Facebook and YouTube, and we're going to have people vote in to see which song they like the most. Okay, so we're going to get that kind of partnership and that kind of cooperation and that kind of interest from the people around the region to vote on which song they like the most. We're looking for the next Rihanna and the next Coffee, huh? And we think they're out there. And so you can't see them if we don't put something out there for them to showcase their talent. So that's what we want to do. We want to put that Tropic Spin Music and Song Competition in July 23rd. It's been hard trying to get sponsors for it, but we've been, dragging our cross, trying to make sure we get all the sponsors in place, make sure we can have a good event this year. We've touched base with most of the musicians and entertainers unions from around the region. We have a few more to touch as well. We have the people in Central America we have to reach out to, but the lady in Belize from the Belize Department of Culture said she has contact with everybody there in Central America from El Salvador to Honduras. And so she's going to help us with the Spanish, and she's going to help us with getting our message out there about the Tropic Spin Music and Song Competition this year. So we want artists from all around the region, from Aruba, from the Bahamas, from Barbados, from St. Vincent, and we know you guys are out there. So that's going to happen in July 23rd this year. Otherwise than that, that's it for me. I just want to thank you guys and thank everybody for coming out today and watching on Facebook Live. Thank you for your entries, everybody. And thank Dr. Hunt and the University of West Indies for helping us out with this. And hopefully she'll come back again next year and do this again next year for us. Please say you would, Dr. Hunt. I want to put you on the spot. Thank you so much, Dr. Hunt.
Yeah, I think I think you can, twist my arm.
Yes.
And get it done.
I will.
And then I just want to, I hope you don't mind if I say a few last words about the book you're thinking about putting together for the top 10, 14, 15 entries.
Yeah.
What I want to really encourage is editing.
Yes.
Right. So some of the stories, like I said, had a lot of potential, but in terms of editing, the tightness wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Which is what was really remarkable about the prize-winning stories. All those stories that got a prize were very tightly written, very organically developed. Yes. And we want to see that in all those potentially good stories that entered this competition.
Yes. Okay, that's good. Thank you so much, Dr. Hunt. I'll look out for that as well. We believe we're carrying somebody's oil, whether they're an author, whether they're a musician, whether they're a poet, we're carrying somebody's oil. And we want to anoint those people who have that talent and put them at a higher level. So hopefully this year, the Caribbean Literary Conference, you guys have that opportunity to meet persons worldwide authors and worldwide publishers to get your name out there. So we're doing that for you guys. And thank you once again. And this is the end of our award ceremony for the first annual Caribbean Magazine Plus Short Story Award competition. Thank you so much. Goodbye.